Hey folks, it's Ardwulf. Welcome. We're going to talk briefly, I hope, about Case Blue. So, what is Case Blue? For those who don't know, I strongly suspect that everybody watching this video does, but I'm going to show you anyway. Case Blue is a large game about the 1942 to 43 operations on the East Front in World War II. It is one of the biggest games ever made. Certainly, it's in that category, and the rules for it are available at gamersarchive.net under Operational Combat Series. This, of course, if you watched my previous rambling manhandling of the Sicily 2 rules, you'll know that this is where you go to find the latest version of the OCS rules, the OCS tables, and the game-specific rules. So that's all here. We're not going to go through this, although I'm going to make a couple observations here. Case Blue, then, is two games that together link to a third game. Those two games are Case Blue proper, which is the southern section of this map, basically this area. This is something like 5 or 7 maps, something like that. This basically fits on a 4x8 table, and I'll show you pictures of that. The other thing that it includes is basically a second revised edition of an older game in the OCS series, Enemy at the Gates, which is the drive on Stalingrad. That's basically this area. And the thing that these together link to is what is represented here in part in the southern 2 maps, I think, of Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2, which is the drive on Moscow during that same period. So what we're playing, what I got pulled up in the Vassal module here, and we're not playing this in Vassal, we're playing it on an actual tables, I should say, and again, I'll show you pictures, is all of Case Blue, all of Enemy at the Gates, and the southern section, southern third, roughly, of Guderian's Blitzkrieg 2. So, basically, this kicks off with a big German offensive. The Germans kind of need to make a decision as to where they're going to go. These relatively powerful, I'll zoom in here a little bit. The Germans have in reserve several clusters of fairly powerful formations. They've got one here. The Vassal module shows you these H's. Those are counters that, based on the Fog of War rule, are not available for me to see, but there's a big one here in Orel. There's a big one here in some place I can't pronounce. And there's a whole big cluster of them over here behind the line, aimed squarely at Voronezh. I want to say that's a roughly correct pronunciation of that. And then a big cluster down here pointed who knows where. We will see where they go. So the nature of what we're playing here, the Germans could decide, hey, we're going to go for Moscow and drive everybody off the map. But then the game's over in 3 sessions, and I don't know that we're going to do that. So that doesn't make any sense in terms of what we are trying to do. So I think the Germans are going to go south for Stalingrad. Stalingrad is down here. The Russian line is very porous. We have here some Italians, we have here some Romanians, we have some Waffen-SS, and there's some Hungarians. Are these not Romanians? These might not be Romanians, although I think they are. And we've got some Hungarians up here someplace, far away from the Romanians. So the Germans are probably going to push up here. We have, by the way, gotten through with the first German turn. It took us about 6 hours, bearing in mind that some of that was eaten by setup and the strategy discussion where the Soviet players, including myself, were out of the room. But we think the main push is going to be towards Stalingrad and the oil fields of the Caucasus. The Caucasus map is, I'll show you the pictures because it's got to be seen to be believed. So here's one 4x8 table with an extension that had to be added to it to accommodate the GB2 maps, or all the GB2 maps. This shows the northern section. So basically, this is not really. This is all of Enemy at the Gates, the northern slice of Case Blue, and then that's the rest of Case Blue. I hate this stupid Microsoft program. The area I didn't get a picture of it, but the Caucasus is vast on this map. So the strategic situation here, and this northern part of this is all empty because that stuff's all on the overlapped section from the other map. The Caucasus is just vast. The strategic situation is that we're going to end up defending down there at some point. The Russians, the Soviets, still hold Sevastopol. We can see the siege of Sevastopol ongoing. So the Germans did push on Sevastopol in their one turn, and did not take another hex. So we, as the Soviets, plan on losing Sevastopol, but we would like to make that as costly and as time-consuming as possible for the Germans, because these are German units that are not committed elsewhere. So we did pretty good down here. We did lose some steps, but we did also do very well in the air battle over Sevastopol, with very costly air struggle for the Germans. I mean, not very costly. They lost like 3 steps. But hey, you know, I think that's fantastic. Here's some section of the northern line. Here's a much clearer, less crappy shot. In fact, I'm probably going to delete this picture. It's that bad. Here's a less crappy shot of the northern section of the line. You can see this cluster of giant stacks of Germans over here. We've got down here the southern section of the line, and here's the whole setup. So, and what do I got? What else do I got? This is center of the line. This is the mostly the southern section of the line. You can see the Italians down there. But this is the whole setup, and both tables required extra little boards to be tacked on to the otherwise already huge tables. So this whole thing is very large. It's going to take us a long time to play through, and I don't have any feel for me doing video on this. But I did want to make a couple observations, particularly in the sense of me having done a previous video on Sicily 2 regarding OCS, and there were some things that I was hesitant about that I expressed in that video, and things that I found even off-putting, would not be an entirely false characterization. One of those things was the hex numbering system that the gamers uses. It is unconventional, don't get me wrong, but they do this weird thing where they number 1 hex row every 5 hexes, and that's unusual, and I found that a little difficult to deal with in terms of the vassal module, but actually within a couple of minutes after handling the physical pieces, I actually think it's a pretty nice system, and it means that you don't get lost in the hex numbers. I actually kind of like it in retrospect. Another thing that I found confusing dealing with the vassal pieces is the way that steps are denoted in this game. So you could see how big this vassal module is and how slow and weird just dragging pieces around is. So we got here a couple of Soviet units. Basically all units, whatever faction, are 1 step, unless they have one of these little yellow symbols, these little yellow oval or round or close to round symbols on them, in which case they have multiple steps. They have that number of steps available. So these are 2 infantry divisions, 2 rifle divisions that are 2 steps apiece, and you mark steps with step loss markers. So can we even do that here? Oh, we can't do that in this module. That's unfortunate, but I'm not using the module, so I'm just using this as sort of a backdrop to show certain things about the game for the purposes of the video. So again, this was another thing where, you know, I found this confusing and it's weird and it's unusual in the vassal module, but handling the physical pieces, that reservation pretty much evaporated immediately. Another interesting thing, and I'm closing in on the video's too long territory here, is the other thing that I'm playing face-to-face is actually Second Front, which is the GRD West Front World War II entry in the Europa series, the time-hallowed Europa series, started by Game Designers Workshop and continued by Games Research and Design, and then it went to whoever's got it now that's been cocking around with Total War for years. So that fiasco aside, What struck me reading the OCS rulebook again now, having played Europa, is how clear the roots of OCS in Europa are. This was not at all clear to me before, even though the rules do say, and I had noticed this before, that hey, this regimental equivalent thing, this is an idea we got from Europa. There are a lot of other aspects of this game that remind me of the Europa system, the air system, for example, which is way cleaner and way more appropriate to the scale of the game than it is in Europa. I could rant for now having played it for a couple of months every week. I could do a Europa video and rant about issues I've got with the Europa system and what I like about the Europa system, but we'll save that for that potential future video. But those roots in Europa, which had come up as a conversational thing before. I mean, somebody had told me that, well, this is Dean's Essig's answer to Europa, and that's much more clear now to me. That I don't know how true that is, as a statement of fact, but it seems very clear that Europa did have an influence, and that's very obvious now to me, having played some Europa. My initial impression, having done half a turn here, is that it's my sense of the complexity of the OCS system is accurate. It's complicated, but not terribly complicated. My other sense of there is a lot of depth in the system to master also looks like it's going to be accurate. So the advantage, though, is I've got access to the online rules for this, which I don't for Europa, and that's represented a challenge where we were pretty reliant on one guy at the table to be the rules guy, and he's very good, but that's, I mean, that would drive me crazy. So I'm glad I don't have to be that guy, but I'm also glad that for Case Blue here, I do have access to the online rules, and that's going to make things a lot easier for me in the long run. Because what I will do is, pretty much go play the game and then like come home, bone up on those sections of the rules that confuse me during that session. That's my standard rules learning modus operandi, and it works for me. That's not how everybody learns rules, of course, but that's how it works for me. So do I plan to do Case Blue video? Not really. Those of you who are following me on Twitter, there is a link to the Twitter channel in the notes below, so check that out if you are interested. We'll get to see some photographs as the game gets played. Obviously, this is going to take a while, as you could probably imagine. We imagine that this will go probably a year at minimum. We'll see how that works out. But in the meantime, I'm super excited to have a chance to play this. First of all, because I've wanted to play OCS for a while, and it's just now that the opportunity is going to come up. Chances are excellent that I will end up playing at OCS at Winterfest in February in Sandusky, Ohio, which is about 2 or 3 hours from me. But I'll be up there, and hopefully we'll get into some OCS up there too. It won't be this, because I think, although this might be going on there for all I know, but that's not the plan. And I would like to play more of this system, and it is cool to get a chance to play a game of this sort of legendary status at this point. It's been out of print for a while now. It goes for bunches of money. If you try to collect it, you're probably going to spend $300 or $400, maybe even more, to procure a copy. It is not something I plan to procure because of that. It's not that I wouldn't like to have a copy, and certainly if a gangbusters deal happens to land in my lap while I have the money in my pocket, I will jump on it. But I don't think that's terribly likely. So we will just be assuming that I'm not going to get the chance to pick up a copy of Case Blue, but lots of the local folks have a copy. I do have other OCS games that I can then apply whatever knowledge I gain to, so that's very exciting. I would certainly like to get to play a real game of Sicily 2 and Tunisia 2, and I like the look of Beyond the Rhine, and I know a lot of OCS folks are a little turned off to it, but I don't care. So I will be curious to see how things develop in the future. I may do another video on it. I don't know what the format of such a thing would be, but best bet is to follow me on Twitter, and you can get filled in a sort of semi-narrative fashion there. So thanks for watching. I appreciate you putting up with me for 15 minutes of babbling about a game that I just started playing, but it was exciting enough that I felt like I could do a video on it. So thanks again for watching. I'll see you next time.